Okay, Assalamualaikum. So we're going to continue. In previous video, we have learned about the introduction of selection, and also now we're going to continue with the selection process itself. Okay, so steps in selection process. As I've mentioned in previous video, it can be varies from organization to one organization to another. Alright, so there are altogether 7 steps in selection process. So it started with submission of resumes, the completion of the application in the organization itself, the interview session. After the interview, the company will do some reference and background checks for those person that they are actually interested in to hire, and also some of position or job might requires the company to test whether the person to be employed actually have the relevant knowledge to perform the job itself. So this process is called as pre-employment test. After the pre-employment test, if the company actually interested to hire someone, they would require the person to perform a medical examination or drug test as well. Okay, and lastly, the hiring decision would be made. Okay, so please take note that this selection process might varies in terms of their sequence from one organization to another. Okay, for example, from my previous experience, after the company have offered me the job itself, then only they would requires me or ask me to perform the medical examination after they have made the hiring decision. So from one organization to another, the selection process might varies. Okay, so now these steps in selection process actually happens in several phases. All right, so we're going to look at in different phases of the selection process itself. But before that, in doing selection, actually what the company are looking for is that to have or to obtain reliable and valid information about the candidate itself that apply for the job in the company. Okay, so what is reliability? Reliability is the degree to which an interview, test, or other selection procedures result in consistent information about the candidate. So you do the interview, you do the pre-employment testing and others procedure. So do you have the consistent information about the candidate itself? Does the result from the interviews and also the test is consistent with one another, or the applicant actually excel in the interview, but in terms of the test, the candidate doesn't perform? Alright, so if possible, they want to get reliable information that they could get from the candidate itself. That is why sometimes the company would do several steps in a selection process. They would do some testing and also interview as well, right? This is to make the accurate prediction about a person itself. Alright, then on the validity of information, it is the degree to which a task or selection procedure actually measure or predict a person's ability to do the job itself. Okay, so in terms of validity, we want to know actually the person can perform the job itself. Okay, people can claim anything during the interview. Yes, I can do the job, I know how to do the job, but doesn't they really know how to do or how to perform the job itself? So we actually can measure, the company actually can measure by doing some testing before the decision to hire someone being made. Alright, so we have looked at the steps in selection process, right? I've mentioned this selection process could happen in several phases. Alright, we're going to look at phase number 1, which is initial screening. So before you interview the applicant for the job itself, first the company need to screen out people who aren't qualified for the job in order to save time and money. And now, during recruitment, we have advertised the vacancies. So now we can get like 100 applications for one position. Are we going to interview the 100 applicants? It's not a wise decision to make because it requires a lot of time to interview 100 person. So now, before actually you going to select someone to be interviewed, usually company will screen out those unqualified candidate. Maybe someone with not relevant background education, or someone with or without experiences. This selection is based on what are required from the person to perform the job itself. Alright. So in initial screening, what the company would do, they would screen out those people who aren't qualified. So let me remind you, CGPA somehow it is very important to secure an interview. So an organization will look at your CGPA first in order to make decision whether this candidate could be called for an interview or not. Okay. That is one of the criteria which company will look at when they want to interview someone that are just finished their studies. Alright, so in initial screening, usually company will look at on the candidate itself from several methods. This is the information gathering stage, whereby you're going to look at the information that you have for a particular candidate, and they would just screen out, they would select the most relevant qualification or application to be selected for the next stage. Okay. So how to screen out in initial screening? So we're going to look at the information, and this information is provided by whether the candidates, or you could gather information from other sources as well. Okay, so how does the company would screen out applicants? So first they're going to look at the cover letters and also the resumes. Okay, usually a candidate or applicant would send the resume together with the cover letter. Okay, so resumes and cover letters are used to assess the applicant, especially for salaried position. A well-written cover letters are important if a requirement of the job itself is having a good written communication skills. Okay, so if that position requires you to do some writing, so cover letters would provide initial notification whether the person is actually good in writing or not. And also cover letters are important in terms of the content. You must know what kind of things to be written in that cover letters. Okay. Second one, the organization can look at search information from internet checks. And nowadays, let me tell you, social media checkings are quite popular. They would look at your social media account, and this is how the company want to know what kind of personalities that you have. Okay, whether you have the right kind of personalities to be employed or to be part of the company itself. Okay, beside internet check and social media checkings, sometimes the company would require the candidate to do some video resumes. Okay, video resumes is a short videos that highlight the application the applicant's qualifications beyond what they can communicate to you on their resume. So this is actually to assess the personality again, and also their communication skills in the videos itself. Sometimes the company would require the applicants to do some video resumes. Okay, and lastly, in initial screening, the company also could refers to the application form. Alright, so usually in Malaysia, the application form is filled up right before the interview itself. Okay, so if you are called for an interview, when you register, they would require you to fill up the application form. So what are the content in the application form? What are the information required? It's quite a lot. Sometimes there's the section for personal information, qualification in terms of education backgrounds, experiences also asked in the application form. Alright, so these are the things, the required information that are needed by the company before they actually can make decision to employ someone. Alright, so that is on initial screening. So basically what happened in initial screening, the company actually want to screen out those person with they are not qualified for the job itself, to save time and cost from doing interviews to everyone that apply for the job itself. Okay, so next video we're going to discuss the employment interview, the next phase in selection process. Okay, see you.